Neeti, you need to unmute yourself.
So sorry. So good afternoon, everyone. And I think after this very vibrant interaction with all our alumni, we have a very experienced alumni, as Yuki said, with us. And it's a great opportunity for all of us that she's here, and she's here to share her experiences with us. So I would like to welcome Ms. Anika Badyal Basu to Comscape, which is an annual academic festival of the Department of Development, Communication, Extension, and Journalism. We welcome you, Anika, and it's great to have you here. And sorry to keep you waiting. I think we almost started on time. It's almost time. So I would start with introducing Anika. Besides, she's an alumni. So she has done her master's in community resource management and extension. Right now, she's working with learning, evaluation, and impact at American Indian Foundation India. And prior to working with American Indian Foundation, she has 13 long years of experience of working with a lot of leading organizations such as CEDA, which is Canadian International Development Agency, Nielsen India, and also University of Delhi. So Anika, we welcome you at IHE, and it's a great pleasure for all of us to have you here. And it's great for the students that they can interact with you and learn from your experiences. So today, Anika will be talking to us about the role of continuing education during COVID-19, which we all think is very difficult times, and she'll be sharing her experiences on the topic. So without a delay, without any wait, Anika, please share your experiences, and the platform is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neeti. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm extremely excited to be here. And I can see lots of familiar, friendly, old, memories, and, these faces bring with them. So thank you so much. And I did get a glimpse of what the previous session was talking about. There were so many alumni talking about what a great place this is and what a beautiful time in your life that you have right now. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So and I could watch them talk about it a lot longer. But coming back to the topic at hand, without further ado, I will like to talk about first. So the way I've planned this session is that I'll take you through what AIF does, which is the American India Foundation. I lead the research department, the monitoring, evaluation, and learning department of AIF at present. And all of the research needs at AIF, all of the programs that we do, I'm going to give you a snippet of what we do. I'm going to move on and talk about a research that we conducted during these COVID times on continuing education, so that you get a snapshot of what the research was, why it was important, what we did with that. I think that will be really important for the students to understand, how the real world works, what is it that we try and, get to, how we make evidence-based decisions. So it's not just going to be about this particular research, but I think it'll be good for you to understand how these processes work and what we found from this particular exercise. And then we can take any questions that you might have. So a brief about what AIF does. We are a foundation, the American India Foundation. We fund NGOs. We also conduct programs on our own through direct implementation. We have presence all over the country. And so we have basically three verticals within AIF. There is the education vertical, which is what we're going to talk more about today. There is the livelihoods vertical, where youths are given trainings and then employment and then increase in income. All of that is an outcome of that particular vertical. And then there is the public health department, the public health vertical, where their main focus is on reducing maternal mortality and neonatal mortality in tribal areas far-flung areas of the country. So those are the main three pillars at LEI, Learning Evaluation and Impact Division of AIF. What we do is we look at all of these programs and make sure that they're working well, make sure that the data that we get is usable, make sure that we get regular timely data, make sure we evaluate these programs to know what is working, what is not working, what we need to do more of, what we should stop doing altogether, perhaps. So all of that is what my department does. So this was so in the education space now, particularly the education space, what we do is that there is a program called the Digital Equalizer Program, which basically works with the government schools. And what we do is we try and help and train teachers in getting trained in using technology for imparting their lessons. So there is a curriculum that we have, of course, all schools have, and then that curriculum. So we marry technology into that curriculum and we see whether the students are learning better in government schools through technology. You would all probably be aware of the fact that there is a thrust by the government in using technology for the schools, at the schools, because the schools and the students have to be ready for the 21st, with the 21st century skills, essentially. So that's something that we help the government schools do. We work very closely with the governments and the government school teachers and the headmistresses so that they can utilize these trainings and help with the increasing and improvement in the learning outcomes of children. Now, this was before, right? But come COVID, back in March, everything was locked down. We didn't know how to interact because the schools were closed. So we didn't know how to interact with our beneficiaries. We did not know what their needs were. So that was the time when this research was conducted. It was conducted with parents of government school children where we work. And this was conducted in 12 states with over 4,400 parents. And since we couldn't visit them, this was done over the phone. Now, the problem that we faced there was that we did not have phone numbers because, there's a privacy constraint and we're a third party for all intents and purposes. So then we reached out to the student with the teachers, and then they spoke about how, we could, they had some numbers. So we did, snowballing, and we tried to reach out to as many parents as we could in these 12 states, and that's how we had that data. The purpose was to identify what is it that we could help these students with, we could help these parents with. Who are these parents? We know that they're the lower income group, and they would be the most affected. But for continuing intervention with them, what is it that we can do was something that we wanted to find out. I would like to take you a bit through a dashboard that we prepared with that data. It's a beautiful dashboard, presents the data in a very interesting way. So Neeti, would I be able to present my screen?
Yes, I think, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So I am going to share with you this this dashboard that we prepared for the research. Is everyone able to see it? Neeti, can you confirm?
Yes, it's visible. Yeah.
Perfect. So we, like I said, it was 4,403 sample size, and we, we conducted this research. These are tabs that you can see. I'm not going to bore you with all of the findings, but I'm going to talk about a bit about the demographic and maybe the education tab right here. So if you could follow my cursor, I think you would be able to see what I'm trying to show. So when you talk about, so we started with the education of the parents, this is the orange bars show you the father's education, and the green bars talk about the mother's education. As you can see, more of the mothers had never attended schools rather than the fathers. the education as a whole was not that high across mothers and fathers. The occupation, close to 50% of the fathers were daily wage laborers, and close to 3 in every 10 mothers were daily wage laborers. Majority of the mothers, like you see, 51% of them were homemakers, were not gainfully employed. We also tried to look at enrollment in schools, how many of their children were enrolled in schools. So we can see that 2 to 3 children is what they had, the number of children that they had enrolled in schools. And we wanted to also find out whether they were paid salary during the lockdown, right? So that's very important for us to understand, because how are they otherwise sustaining themselves? Of course, we later realized, we found out that there were savings that they were using and all of that. So that was something that we can see that majority, most of the fathers were not getting paid during the lockdown, which is loss of wages, which is, how do you sustain and all of that. So we come to the support received, because I don't want to leave you like that, they didn't have any means and then nothing was happening. We also found out that they were getting support from the government. 2/3 of them reported that they, there is some kind of support from the government. A fourth of them also said there was support from others. And when we talked about what was this support, we see that, dry ration was being delivered by the government. So that was something. In some states, even money was reported that they were being given some amount of money by the government. So that was another solace that, they weren't really, struggling for day-to-day survival. But what we also found out was that the NGO sector, the other community members, the local panchayats were also coming forward with help to this demographic. When we came to education, what we wanted to find out was, for future intervention, did they have devices in their households? So we found that TVs were the most popular devices in these households. We also found that smartphones were there, with 3 out of every 4 families. We also found out internet, 65% of the families had internet. So that was something that we could sort of work with going forward. So we knew that it had to be digital. We knew that we had to, tap this particular thing. Given that we had data to back it up, we could actually make a good case for this intervention going forward as well. Then we talked about what technology they preferred for continuing education for their children. And we noticed that most of them, close to 9 out of every 10 of them, talked about use of mobile phones for learning. So they were open to their children using mobile phones for continuing learning, followed by, of course, digital classes on TV, and of course, WhatsApp, which is hugely popular in this demographic and ours, if I may say so. So that was something that was really important for us to find out, how do we leverage these technology platforms so that there is continuation of education of these children. We also did a further analysis of those, who said that they were okay with mobile learning, what kind of phones they had, so 84% of them had smartphones, followed by feature phones, which was there with about 50%, 53%. And we also talked about, we wanted to find out what is the preferred duration, because these devices, they are shared in the household. So it wouldn't be that the child has access to these devices all of the time, especially in these households. So we wanted to know, how long can they be on the phone so that we could design the intervention accordingly. We saw that 1 to 2 hours is what the parents were comfortable with in a day. So we knew that it had to be short, small capsules of intervention that we had to do in a day, so that, between 1 to 2 hours, so that the children could continue education. Before I shut this off, I want to take you through the additional analysis, a bit of state level analysis that we also did. So when we talked about duration of device, usage, we saw that 2 hours was across states the average, with Haryana, Delhi, and Rajasthan saying that they were okay with even more number of hours of device usage by their children. And in Orissa, you can see that this was slightly lower than the rest of the states. Availability of TV was also seen the highest in Tamil Nadu, Orissa, Punjab, and lowest in Maharashtra. But Maharashtra also had the highest. So while they had lowest proportion of television ownership, they had the highest proportion of smartphones. So then, that's the kind of mix that we're looking at. What we knew was that it will not be a one size fits all states. It will be something that we will have to do along the lines of, making certain tweaks as we go along with various states, so that given their own ground realities, with an aim that, the children at least get that opportunity to continue education. We then looked at availability of internet, which was also high in Maharashtra, Rajasthan, states like Orissa, which also had low usage of smartphones, also saw low usage of internet, which corroborates. This is my favorite though. So getting support from the government. You see, if you can see on the screen, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, these were the states where parents reported that they were getting, maximum number of parents reported they were getting support from the government. But then we asked them about, whether they feel concerned about working post the lockdown. And if you see, these are the same states, the southern states, which said that, we are not that concerned about work post lockdown. We know that we will get work post lockdown. So I thought that was very interesting that, the states that had received government support were also feeling that they will get that support even after the lockdown, when they would require that support as well. So this was a small snapshot of what we found out in our intervention. What we took away to our, from this research and utilized in our programs going forward was one that, like I said, there will have to be short bursts of assignments, of classes that they will have to undertake. We also realized that it will have to be a mixed approach. It cannot be just smartphone oriented. It will have to be calls made to the teacher, by the teachers to the parents, so that, there is interaction there as well, especially in households that did not have smartphones. What we also realized was that, going forward, when the lockdown was lifted, the parents had to go back to work. When they had to go back to work, that meant that the device was not with the child at home. So what that meant was that we had to do flexi timings so that the child could have these 2 hours, 1 or 2 hours of classes, of interaction with the teachers, maybe in the evening or during the weekend. So all of these tweaks had to be made. There were also WhatsApp groups that were formed so that, there is constant interaction within this group. And, but with that, with our reliance on technology, what we also realized was that as soon as the lockdown ended, we started our face-to-face interactions as well. One of the interventions that we did was the mobile library, which I would love to talk about with this group of students, because that's how innovation takes place on the ground. What these mobile libraries do is that there is a person who carries them around to these communities, and there are children who have read their first book. They go back and they get the exchange, just like a usual library, just that you don't have to go out of your house to a school or a library to access these. So these were some of the, of course, there was also COVID awareness related intervention that we had to do, given what, their awareness levels was. But that I have not presented because I want to leave some time for interactions with the students. So yeah, that was the finding those are the findings that I wanted to talk about. And the dashboard sort of was presented to a lot of donors apart from us, because at AIF we believe that the data and the learnings have to be disseminated, have to be shared, so that everyone can benefit from those learnings, and we don't have these doubling of efforts where we have this data and another organization feels they don't have access to this data and they have to now collect more data to be able to do these interventions. So that's a learning as well from this whole exercise. I'm happy to report that we've now started this as an initiative, AIF Research Series, where we do these researches on a regular basis. We recently completed, not recently, a month ago. Now in COVID times, recently has also changed definitions. So about a month ago, we completed a research on migrants, returning migrants who've gone back to their house, their hometowns, their native places. What kind of challenges they're facing there? How are they coping up? And we are going to have some interventions around that as well. So thank you all. Thank you. You can. I open the stage for any questions that you might have.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anita. I think firstly we go on to questions. I'll open the platform. But I think firstly I would like to say I think this is a very relevant study in today's time, right? And a couple of topics that you have shared, like returning migrants and all that, I think it's very, very relevant. And not only, I think we all are facing the brunt of this pandemic, teachers and students, and the technology use. And as you said, the definition of a lot of things have changed, like what is normal and what is recent has also changed. So I think some of the insights that you shared of these researches is very relevant to today's time, and it's very useful. So then we'll open the floor for questions. So if students have any questions, they can ask, or any other faculty member. But also, I also want to ask you, where can we find these researches? Like if you want to go and read them in detail. So when are they available? Are they available online, on your website, anywhere?
Yes, so it is available on AIF's website. It's www.aif.org. I will separately also share with you these relevant links in case you're interested. I can also share, the articles that are there will give you a snapshot of the findings. So I will share it with you after this.
Thank you so much. So, girls, if you have any questions, please, you can ask.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi,
Ma'am, we were talking about the research part. You said that we made a data. Could you hear me out?
Yes.
Okay. So we were preparing a database. So how do we actually collect that raw data? Suppose the sample size is quite big here because there are people located in different geographical locations, and maybe they are not the permanent residents of the locations here. So how do we start the process of collecting and just narrowing down that so broad data in order to reach a conclusion and then go for those innovations, like you stated that you started with a library, that to a mobile library wherein a physical person comes, collects the books and gives in an exchange. So how does that process initiates on the ground?
So Jagriti, we at AIF have presence across the country. So these 12 states were selected because we had active programs and active teams in these states. Hence, it was easier for us because our teams were already there and they were stuck at home. What we had to do was that, wherever it was not possible, we did not push them into face-to-face interaction during this research. There were phone numbers, like I said, that were made available by the teachers. And from each student or each student's parent that they spoke with, they continued to take more phone numbers and hence they increased. So we did not have to, we were lucky enough not to have to recruit more people for this research because we had our own people. We did have to train them though, because these are program people. So they had to be trained on research. We used a platform called Survey CTO, where one can actually, it's an app where you put your questionnaire in with the options, and it becomes very easy to just scroll and sort of keep answering. It's like Survey Monkey, which I think you must have all used, but a more refined and a more professional version of it, because we could also put consistency checks. Like if somebody has said they have 2 children, but they're giving information only of one later, then there were consistency checks that could actually tell you, no, there was another child that you have to take information for. So that kind of, ways and means were adopted so that we could have a robust information and this thing ready. To your next question about how mobile libraries and other innovations, these are a result of the findings, this data that we've received. You see, in absence of data, the interventions that you do would be more based on your gut feeling. I think newspaper mein maine kuch anecdotal padha tha, and hence I think this intervention would be good. That is the worst place, I would say, to start. The best place to start an intervention would be with a research, so that you know exactly, even if your gut feeling is right, you're surer that your gut feeling will get you the results that you're looking for. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for a failure. The intervention, if you're putting in all that effort, you might as well have some assessment of where the situation is, what the situation is, what the people need before you go into the field.
Thank you so much. That pretty well answers my question. And yes, I got the idea like how to start things out. And just a small, very rudimentary question that I would like to ask here is, if I wish to start for a research work like that, or join a team like associate of yours or any replica, so forth. So how can we start that career off? Like, what's the way for it?
I'll tell you how I started. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Let me take it from there. So I did my bachelor's. I completed my bachelor's in 2003, and then I completed my master's in 2005. After that, I wrote a lot of papers. I spoke in a lot of many conferences, and that's where side by side, of course, I qualified NET, and I started my journey being teaching at Lady Irwin. But side by side, there was a lot of those interactions, interactions with people like myself now, where if you're interested, like you're saying, Jagriti, you will have to sort of put yourself out there, go to conferences, speak at conferences, present your findings there, and that's where the journey starts, because you make these links going forward. Unfortunately, at AIF, we have a freeze in hiring as of now because of COVID. But please share your CV with Neeti or Yuki, and I will reach out to them in case when the hiring freeze is lifted off.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that with Neeti.
All the best.
Thank you.
Girls, is there any other question you would like to ask? Anyone who wants to ask a question? Anika, also, I want to know that the study that you were talking about, were there any suggestions? Because I think most of the studies give suggestions about how to improve the present situation. So the study talked about the problems that people were facing, right, in continuing education. Were there any suggestions? I think mobile library was one of probably that could be the suggestion, and then it was.
There was no, what happened was that there were lots of things that we found out that were lacking, and we acted on them, right? So like I said, so there was one question that we had about awareness. How much do they know about the COVID situation? Or how much do they know about prevention of COVID? So what we found was, while people are aware of social distancing and hand washing, people were not aware of, hand washing for 20 seconds. I know that I have to wash hands. I will have to wash my hands frequently and multiple times. But then again, if I'm only like doing a, quick job of it, then that's not serving the purpose, right? Similarly, they were aware that I have to stay indoors and I have to distance myself socially. But what they didn't know is how much. There's 1 to 2 meters. Those nitty gritties, those details were not there. That percentage was low. So what we did then, what you're calling suggestions, were things that we did. We have included in our interventions these messages as well, so that they can be taken forward and more people know about them. Similarly, government support. We found out that the government was supporting, but only with dry ration, which also then, once the lockdown opened, we saw that, that was not required or that was not being given. Now, people don't have jobs and people don't have ration. What are they going to do? So they were pushed to go back into their workplaces and start working again. So those kind of things. Of course, for us, one big recommendation of the study was that it'll have to be a mix of these different approaches. Technology alone will not be able to save the situation or ensure that the children continue education. But at the same time, there is also that physical connection. There is also somebody going in, finding out, teachers finding out. I mean, I think in this whole thing, the role of teachers has magnified multiple times, because not only do they have to themselves understand technology, they have to also now ensure that everybody understands technology and is able to make use of it for their own learning. So that's something that is a big takeaway.
Absolutely. I think I've seen a lot of researches being done on the impact of online teaching and learning on students, but there's no study wherein the impact has been assessed on teachers and how difficult it is for them. So it's equally difficult. So the students have to attend classes. I'm not saying it's not, that's also a huge work for them, but that they have to be on screen for long hours. But for teachers, it is also teaching and at the same time preparing for those classes and a lot of other administrative work that teachers do.
Neeti, I am glad that you're raising this because it's different challenges for both these groups, I feel.
Right.
As teachers, of course, you've talked about these challenges. For the students, there is also the challenge of if there are multiple children in the school and there's one device, then you will have to take turns, you will have to negotiate the timings, you will have to do a lot more. So even for the parents and the students, this has been a very challenging, time, especially when, if education is not considered very important. If I, as a parent, am not that careful or I'm not that pro education, I'd be like, what, ye to hota rahega abhi, I have to live and I have to earn. That's more important. Education ka kya hai, ek saal nahi padhenge to kya ho jayega. So I think there's it's everywhere. It's all three sides, whichever side that you take is struggling with the current situation. So I think, it's not more or less, it's just we're all in it together.
Right, that's true.
So I think can I ask a question, Neeti?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, Dr. Panu.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, like we are talking about research and education and the digital mode of education and the challenges that we are having. What is your take on the new education policy that has come, and does it show any way forward to this kind of dilemmas and the challenges? Or your take on this?
Of course. So we have been at AIF, discussing about the new education policy and the whole difference that is going to make. And our, with COVID, I think that, the changes are fine, but you have to first get what you have on track. And I think that's going to take time. I know that this recent article, which was talking about, excuse me, which was talking about how, the schools are going to open now from October, from November. But, I also know from our fieldwork experience, Maharashtra, Mumbai, we've not been able to go anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. So I think we will have to wait and see these changes. With the government being so hell bent on introducing new changes when the old ones are still sort of in a quagmire. We don't know what we're going to do with it. So I think that can wait. Similarly, for the FCRA amendment that has come up, I don't know how many of the students would know, but I'm hoping you would. So that is also another change that has come. We have to bring back our existing system first, get it in line, and then introduce new changes to it. Because right now, like Neeti and I were talking about, that the teachers and the students are still grappling with this new form of interaction that they have to get used to. The rest of the changes, of course, will follow, but I personally feel can wait, given the condition and the situation that we're in.
Right, right. To some extent, I agree with you, but I also feel that the ball is rolling at such a fast pace that it is beyond the control of, just any kind of stakeholder. And who knows what's in the future? But digital education is here to stay, I feel.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the faster we get used to it, the better it will be for all of us.
yeah, absolutely. That's right. Thank you.
So, Anika, I would like to make a comment here. It's
Yes,
so
sure.
nice to see you, involved very actively into research. And this is just to tell you that, the curriculum has really changed since then. And now the undergraduate students are also undertaking research. So they have a
That's wonderful.
subject called research methodology in home science, in the home science syllabus. And also in the journalism course, there is a research methods, subject. So they're actually undertaking, research work, though at a smaller scale because of paucity of time. So I'm quite sure that a lot of students will have more interest in research and probably would like to take careers in research, in future.
I think that's a great idea, because either way, I feel that if you're curious by nature, you would fall into this research space one way or the other, in whatever career that you do. So I think research fits into everything. So I'm very happy that the undergrads are also learning about research. It's something that there's so much to do. So I think it's great that that's happening in IHE as well.
Anika, there are many students from various parts of our college studying communication, nutrition. You know about this stream very well. So can you please elaborate that what all areas AIF works into research in addition to education?
Yes, of course, Yuki. So we have, so like I said, this research initiatives, this AIF research series, we started doing it very recently, and I've been with AIF for 2 years now. So this has been in the last 1 year we've been doing a lot of research, because that's been my forte and expertise, because at Nielsen I had done a lot of research, social research, and worked with UNICEF, World Bank, WHO, ICRW, all of these good organizations who focus a lot on research. At AIF, apart from this parents study that we did of government school students that I just talked about, like I said, we also did one study, research on returning migrants. So this was in Orissa that we did. And we included 5 districts which are the most migration prone, excuse me, in Orissa. And what we found out was, while they were open to work, but the MG Naregas, and all of the others that they were reaching out for and were thinking they will get involved with, they don't have enough to offer to all of those, because there are so many of them have gone back, so many migrants have gone back home now. As a result, there's a lot of stress in the rural economy, which was something that was, predicted also. But yeah, so that was one research. I will share the link with you so that you can all sort of go through it in your own time. Then there is the next research that we are going to conduct, which is of the street vendors. So, of course, street vendors lost their livelihoods when the pandemic struck. So some of them went back, some of them started coming back now to the cities. There were some who had stayed on and sort of roughed it out in the cities. So this particular target segment is also going to be now, tapped into. We're in discussion with MSDF. We are in discussion with NIUA as well. There are some tools that are being formulated, but yeah, that's going to be the next one that you can look out for in the research space at AIF.
Anika, in your data, I looked at that there seems to be a correlation between the number of people who are receiving aid from the government and, they worry about getting back to work. So the data shows that when you give them dole outs, they're not so much worried about their livelihoods. So that is also a cause for concern, in terms of government policies and themes and what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
So the southern states were receiving maximum aid, 93 and so %, and they were the ones who were least bothered about getting back to work or about getting work post-lockdown.
Actually, the way the question was asked was not about, whether you want to go back to work. The question was, are you concerned that you will, that you will not find work after lockdown? So because everything is now shut and these are mainly daily wage laborers, the hypothesis was that they would be worried about getting back to work. And, when I say getting back to work, worried about getting back, it's not to say that, the ones who said, no, we're not worried, did not want to go back to work. But these were people who said that, we're not worried. We know that we're going to get work. We are okay with staying home during the lockdown because it's been, told by the government. We trust our government. Hence, we're not concerned that we're not going to find job after the lockdown is lifted.
Okay.
Neeti, can I ask, although we are asking more questions than students, but we are getting this platform also as much curious as students should be.
Right.
Yeah. So Anika, I was just wondering that your organization and many other similar organizations are into data collection and research. But it all depends upon funding. And in times of pandemic, where do you see, whether some organizations have been able to not do research because the focus has come to, survival and of fulfilling the basic needs. So, is this kind of contingent to emergencies, pandemics? We have a subject called NGO management and CSR, where funding agencies' role is very important. And just doing research and not providing solutions, or providing solutions at a very late time, taking a lot of time. Where do you find, how do you find the balance between that? Right.
Yeah,
So that's a great question.
I would like to add, that's what I was about to ask. A lot of time, a lot of researches are done by organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not all stakeholders are involved. I think the policy makers sitting at the top, I don't think they look at these researches. And so how do you make sure that they reach, and the government and the stakeholders sitting and making decisions, it reaches to them, I think. And that's why funding is also.
Also, one more thing, if I just may add, Anika, and then you can answer. You're the expert here. Also, some newer approaches like participatory, where actually somewhere the process of giving back to the community or the beneficiary starts there and then. Those kind of researches are also being done in India. Of course, they also have a lot of challenges and limitations. But that's one way of being in touch and giving it back. So, what is your say? What do you say to that? And
Okay,
the
there's a
role of
lot of
funding and
questions.
so on. Thank you.
Yes, that's a lot of questions. I'm going to try and take all of them. But to your point, Dr. Panu, I completely agree with you that the researches that are done, organizations may not see value in researches now that the situation has become completely it's evolving. We don't know what's going to happen. There people are losing their jobs. But for us at AIF, the researches actually began during the pandemic when we didn't know what is going on so far. So I look at it the different way. Usually we had our teams in the field, so we did get to know a sense of what's happening in the field. So research, we in the organization, research was at a backseat. Okay, karenge acha iska, we have to do impact evaluation, so we will have to do it. It was a have to thing. But with the pandemic striking, what has happened, and I see a shift in mindset, because now with the lockdown, nobody getting into the field, we had no idea what is happening with our beneficiaries. And for a funding organization, that's the worst place to be in. That I have no idea how they're coping, how can I help them? They've been associated with our organization for so long. Is it something that we can't do anything about? That's not an option, right? You want to do something for the beneficiaries that you've been working with, for the government schools that you've been working with, the teachers, what are the challenges that they're. So all the better organizations, I would say, or the more conscientious organizations will start research or will continue research if they really want to make a difference. Coming to Neeti's point, that how do you even get to know, there are so many researches happening, is something even happening? Neeti, that was the exact same problem that I had 13 years at Nielsen, where we did the research, we only did the research and we gave it to the client. And we said, these are the findings, these are our suggestions that you were talking about. And we were out of it. We got our payment and we were out of there. But, as a researcher, I had that thing, what happened to those researches? We given so many inputs, and because when you do research, you also get into it. So I started feeling after a point in time that there is something missing. You need to close the loop. So you've figured out the problem, you've done research, you have the numbers speaking for you, but then how do you close the loop and then make sure that something's happening for it? So there were times when we interacted with our client, but the clients that we had serviced earlier. But that's not always possible in a fast-paced world where you have the next client, waiting to for you to start your research and consult with them and all of that. So that was the reason that I wanted to join the client side. Now, for the last 2 years, now that I'm on the client side, now I'm doing the research, I'm getting the research done by external organizations, and I'm seeing how we're utilizing it. So that I think that's very important. Neeti, another point that you had made was, how do you ensure that the government takes cognizance or takes these researches seriously? Right. I think that what I have to say is that you have to take the government with you when you design the research. So after all these years that I've been working, I see a difference between researches that have been done with the government on board. When I say on board, they should at least know that this research is happening. They should have seen the research tools. They should at least know. They may not be able to give you time because they're always so busy. But I think that's up to you as a researcher, that you push forward and you make it get noticed from the start. What that does is multifold. What that does is, A, they know now about your research. B, they know that, this is happening. They have seen the tools, so their areas of inquiry also you have been able to somehow fit in. Then you have a winner in your hand. But also the findings play a big role. If the findings are not in their favor, you're going to have a big tamasha about it. When I say tamasha, I mean, they may not acknowledge it and they may say, okay, but everyone who wants to do something in their scope of work, who want to make a difference, they do take it seriously eventually. But you have to just take them along from the start and not get bogged down by the fact that, they're not showing interest. They wouldn't. They have other things to do. But if you are able to get this magic sauce where you have them on board from the start, and then you get them, you launch the research, be in touch about the research, show them the findings, the preliminary findings, stay in touch. I think then I've seen that there is more uptake of the research. I hope I've answered both your questions. Neeti, no, I can't hear you because you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I said, I think we are motivated. You're motivated the students also. They're also asking questions now. So there are two questions from the students. So Richa is asking, ma'am, what differences did you observe in the continuing pattern of digital education between urban and rural areas during this pandemic?
Superb question. I'm so glad that the girls are warming up to this. So, Richa, there is a huge difference. Like when I was showing you the dashboard, you would have or you may not have noticed that Orissa was showing low smartphone usage because they did not have ownership of smartphones. And what we noticed was that there were more farming communities in the intervention areas that we usually work in. So hence, if you don't have smartphones to begin with, if you don't have technology access, internet to begin with, it is going to falter even more. So we have a program called LAMP, which is a very interesting program. Dhyan se sunna, huh? So this is a learning and migration program. The program is called Learning and Migration. What it does is we only work in rural areas in that particular program. There are these seasonal migrations. You would have heard of seasonal migrations that happens. So seasonal migration mein, the children are taken with the parents for say 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever period. What that means is a child who's enrolled in school has been taken out of school, goes with the parent, works with the parent at wherever they have gone, comes back and has lost a full year of education. So what we have done is, with the government again, what we've done is we have, government has these seasonal hostels that they set up in these areas where migration is high, seasonal migration is high. So what they do is that we help them with the support of the community to get to help the child stay back at these seasonal hostels while the parents have gone for work. What that ensures is that the child is continuing education, the child is staying at the hostel, and when the father and the mother come back, the child then goes back into their family. So there is a continuity of education that this particular program sort of ensures. Now, to your question about digital education, there's a big challenge we are still facing in the rural communities. Hence, the mobile libraries, and there are also these these villages where we are trying to bring them to an open space, and social distancing and all of that is being tried. But I will not be able to say anything confirmed right now that we've made an impact because of that. That we would know a little later when more things like that start happening.
All right. I hope that answers Richa's question. And there's another question by Richa, and she's asking, are children studying in rural areas able to get quality education during the pandemic? And if so, up to what extent?
So, iske andar, this, I would not even be able to tell you that even in urban areas, children are getting quality education, quite honestly. I think more than quality, this is my personal opinion, so don't quote me anywhere. So right now is the time when we need to make sure that people don't, or students don't lose touch from education. Okay, in these unprecedented, weird times when there are lots of challenges that the families are facing, putting focus on quality and better grades and all of that would only add to the stresses on the teacher side, on the parent side, what Neeti and I were just talking about. It is important that we ensure that there is continuity. They don't forget what they've learned so far, but let's just give them a break in terms of, the competition and the become better and score better. I think as long as the child sails through this year, let's just cut them some slack. That's my opinion. Okay, we have another question from Mahima. How do you happen to choose your topics as they are nowhere related? Very good question, Mahima.
Interesting question.
Okay, so I choose my researches, and these are not my researches. I wish they were, but they're not. They're the organization's researches. So we have to pivot our researches as per the need of the organization. So if we are going to, we have decided that we are going to start work with street vendors, we are now doing a research on street vendors. So I'm going to design the research, the methodology, the tools, and all of that. Earlier, for the parents' research, we did it because we wanted to know, like I said, what is going on with our beneficiaries. And it's not something that we could leave out in the open to our gut. I hate it when people say, I think this should be done, when it's not backed with data. So that's another thing. And I think any researcher that you talk to would speak the same language. So it's not like I'm very different or anything. But yes, so that's why they are different, because AIF works in different areas: education, livelihoods, health. For health, we have a partner who takes care of our research needs. So it's not something that we have so far worked on, but health also forms a component in all of these researches as well. So hence, that's how we choose our researches, basis the organization's need. Okay, Bhargavi. So is there any number criteria to whom you provide these facilities? Which facilities, Bhargavi? If you could just specify that, I think I'll be able to answer it better. Or you could talk, really. I mean, unmute yourself and answer and ask the question.
Like the educational services she's asking, like maybe mobile library, if you have that. So how many people you reach to?
How many people? So we have these, rural areas, we have these villages that we work in with the school students or the remediation classes that we conduct. So those are the villages that we cover. All children in those villages are covered by us. So all school-going children. Then those who are dropped out, there is discussion with the parent community as well, the community at large as well. Because girls' education is a big hot potato. It's very difficult to push them towards it. So just talking to the students or just their parents does not really kill it. You have to move on and you have to talk to the entire community. Start those, and then I think it was Dr. Pannu who was saying that get them to invest in these interventions so that they have a life of their own. Even if you move out of that community, they're still able to sustain what you've built so far, and it just doesn't crumble in your absence. I think that's where that's where we are trying to get towards, where we move out and they and the LAMP program is doing a good job of it.
Like community ownership, I mean,
absolutely. In urban areas, it's slightly difficult with the DE program, Digital Equalizer program, because urban areas behave differently. But in rural areas, it's worked out quite well for us.
I think Savita ma'am is also asking a question. She's asking, do you work on any gender-related issues?
Oh, Savita ma'am, this is my Dukti Rak. I am trying to get AIF to stop being gender agnostic, because when we have our numbers, we report on, overall populations that we've covered. But yes, this is something that I'm trying to push forward for. And even, this project that we're doing for Microsoft, they have started, asking for number of girls that we've reached out to. So I think that's pushing us as well. The collaborations that we've had with Microsoft, with, there's a Girls for Tech program within DE, which is very interesting. So the girl students, they're supposed to learn more about STEM. We're also including the boys because we work in co-ed schools as well, but we're not reporting on the boys. So that's very interesting. You're making all this effort, but only the girls are being reported. So that makes me quite happy. But yeah, that is something that we're going forward. That's where the future is, Dr. Agarwal. That is where we will all have to go towards, where girls are given more focus of all interventions, girls and women.
Mahima is asking another question. Ma'am, so organization bias doesn't affect the...
Mahima, we can't, that I think where the funding is. So research is where the funding is. I think that's
Yeah.
don't quote me on that one. But yeah, that's something that, it's only at the academic level, at when you're studying, where your professors let you choose what you want to work on. But I think even there, you should focus on what's going to, because your ultimate goal is not the research. Its ultimate goal is that it should be utilized somewhere, right? So who's going to utilize that research is also going to be something that you'll have to start thinking about.
I think I have to say this, Anika, that I think a lot of students, and I think I am also very motivated, and we have motivated us towards research, and not by sharing what are the insights in the researches that you have done, but how you have shared it. I think the way you have spoken, I think we all are very motivated, and the students started asking questions. They were interested in how it works and how you conduct these researches.
I'm glad.
Yeah. So I think I will now request Dr. Savita Agarwal ma'am to kindly give a vote of thanks to Anika for being such a wonderful person. I think it was lovely having an interaction with you.
Thank you, Neeti. So it gives me great pleasure to hear out my former student, our former student, and hear her speak so confidently, so nicely. And Anika has been a very bright student. She's been very responsive, very responsible. And I remember, we were doing puppet shows, and I remember, she and her team going out to at least 2 locations. One was, some social responsibility initiative. It was in another school where there was a huge mela kind of a thing. And so she had excellent voice modulation, and she was enacting few puppets, and she was a very, very bright and a very good student. And I'm so happy to see her prosper and do so well in the area, and so passionate about research. And so Anika, we are so happy to have you here with us. I wish this was earlier, but this has taken 13 long years maybe. So, so you should be here, so you should be here more often and keep motivating the students, because as I told you that they are engaging in research at the UG level also. And if your organization has any programs where they want students involvement in the sense, maybe a series of seminar or something like that, So, you should, tell us so that our students can benefit from the same. And a lot of organizations have some kind of a platform where they interact also with students and get their feedback, or involve them sometimes even in data collection in the city. So, like that. So,
Achha, would they be, sorry, ma'am, would they be available for that? Because that's something that I keep looking out for.
yes, because, they also do an internship.
Okay.
That is between the 5th and 6th semester, or between the 4th and 5th semester. So that is a good time, when they, like last time, they did data collection for a particular center for social research.
Center for Social Research.
That turned out very well. And also they are trained, they are sensitized to a lot of subjects like gender studies. And they, of course, are studying research methodology. So, some of the students are really trained in doing it. So any kind of institutional support or involvement can really, can go a long way in pushing them further. Yeah. So all the best to you, and we hope that you are more successful, and all the best. And I'm sure the students enjoyed this talk, and it motivated them to do better work, because a lot of them are doing, small surveys as part of gender studies and other programs. And all the best to you again. Thank you so much. We are so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Anika, for just accepting it so easily and
Thank you.
coming here. Thank you
Lot
very
of
much.
Thank
gratitude
you,
Means a
you.
lot.
for you, Anika, in the chat book.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye
So
bye.
this brings us to the end of the program.
Yeah, so we can close the Comscape here with this amazing session with alumni and alumni as a speaker, an amazing speaker. So
Right.
today we got hold of several alumni from decades, we can say. It started from Anika was from a batch of CRME, which was around 13 years back, and later then we met some of our alumni who were
Recently passed alumni, recently
2004, 2005, and the recent
passed.
ones. And soon all our students will be our alumni and will reach to amazing heights, and they will come back to us and we'll
That,
invite you as a speaker.
it's a wonderful feeling. It's a very nice feeling to see students growing and doing so well.
Right. So any student wants to join and add on to their experiences of meeting so many alumni and speakers during Comscape. This is a different kind of Comscape. We were
Yeah,
experiencing
it's
it's very
a
different.
online
So
I think
anything
it should inspire them, the students, to do something really focused and well in life, and come back to this platform and address students.
yeah.
virtual landscape.
Have somebody speak up, from every group, like, our semester 5 students, home science and journalism. So maybe somebody can speak from each group.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes.
We have Kanika and others from the other batches also.
Yeah,
Yes.
from our previous group batches also. We have some
Yes.
students from our previous batches as well.
I saw
I saw
Kanika.
Harina.
Harina.
It is so nice that you all could connect and come here for these sessions.
Right.
Yes.
I think Varda and Bhumika, they were all here.
They were all here.
Bhargavi's writing, honestly, alumni achievement motivated us a lot. Bhargavi.
Yeah.
So I think time to say bye. So students.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being
Kushi is
part.
writing, thank you very much to all the teachers for taking Comscape to another level. Thank you so much, Kushi and Bhargavi.
To
I think your
another level,
word,
and the virtual level.
the level is a virtual level.
Virtual level.
Not just English +1. I love that +1. Your virtual language is also different. It's +1 to everything.
Is something like as above.
Yeah, +1.
Right.
Okay, thank you very
And
much.
thanks to Yuki ma'am for curating such a wonderful virtual event, virtual conclave, and really it is. I think we are like more connected, and it feels really nice to also
Neha is
have.
also saying, thank you for conducting such an interesting and instructive session. Thank you so much, girls. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all of you to be a good audience.
Ma'am,
and
can I
patient
ask
audience.
something?
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
Mahima, go ahead.
Ma'am, like I happened to discuss this thing. We were discussing like what the names are of each of the colleges department fest. Then I happened to wonder like what made us select Comscape and what does it exactly mean. And when I did Google, I couldn't find anything. So I was like, what does it mean exactly?
That's unique, isn't it?
I think scape, as I said, you have a landscape like communication scape, so Comscape.
Soon it will be a part of Oxford Dictionary.
it's
New word.
our
We'll
word.
add it there.
Yeah, it's our word.
Department of
Contributed by-
Communication and
Contributed by the department.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. +1.
Copyrighted.
Anu ma'am.
We should get it copyrighted. I think it's unique.
Yeah.
We should get it registered and patent. ये हमारा है
If
Comscape.
we could not find it on Google, then obviously it's unique. We should copyright it.
Yeah. Thanks, Mahima, for searching for it and letting us know.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful of you, actually.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
ma'am. Bye.
Bye.
Good evening to
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
See you in the classes, students. Bye. Virtual classes.
Okay, bye, everyone. We are
Okay,
a
bye
great-
everyone. Have a good
Yes.
weekend. Bye.
Have
Bye.
a great weekend. Bye.
Hello, Neeti ma'am.
Yes. Hi, Imran.
How are
and
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Long time.
I'm always on time. Last minute, na, VIP. So,
Chalo, congratulations for this successful workshop.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
successful Comscape. And of
Comscape.
course, workshops as well.
We haven't talked yet. I know we haven't talked in
Yeah,
like a month.
lot of time. I think.
We are very busy in our lives. No, very busy.
No. You are.
Yeah, you are very busy. You do so much, Imran. How do you manage?
all of us are.
Actually, this like, virtual teaching has really it's difficult.
It's really time consuming, and you do not really then know what's the output. It's really
Yeah,
so
so
much of a
somebody
fuzzy
asked me the
ground.
quality of education in rural area. Like even urban, you don't know what is happening. There's no interaction. You can't see people. There's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very
Let's hope that we get to see.
each other's
We
face.
get back to. Inshallah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Getting recorded. I need to watch that thing. Chalo, bye.
Edit kar lo, bhai.
Edit. Just two of us are talking. Chalo, bye. Take care and
Bye.
say my.
Bye, students. Bye.